you guys. How's it going? So today I am talking to you about how to buy the right leather for your leather projects. I was just on here. I think my live video cut out a little bit, so I'm just gonna start it from the top and do this one more time. Um, so have you ever gone to the grocery store and when you go in, you're like, okay, I need to make dinner tonight. What am I gonna make? If you're making spaghetti and meatballs, for example, you need some beef, you need some tomatoes, maybe some mozzarella, some pasta. You know the exact ingredients that you need to get in order to make this meal a success, right? You're not just walking into the grocery store, picking a bunch of random ingredients, and then getting home and being like, okay, I have fish and oranges. How am I going to make this into spaghetti and meatballs? That's kind of backwards. And so the same goes with when you are um, purchasing leather for your projects. You need to know exactly what it is you're making in order to inform the decision about what kind of leather you should be buying. So it's the same way. You need to get the correct materials up front so that you can make it a success. And I mentioned this first just because I see a lot of people making this mistake, and I've made this mistake too. Like when I first got started with leather work, I was so excited to get into it. Like I couldn't wait to go shopping for leather. And I shopped for leather before I even knew what it was that I was going to make. And then I was like, oh, I did this backwards because actually I want to make this other thing that requires a different type of leather. And I already have this leather. So I was forced to either try and make that leather work, which would have just resulted in like a really sloppy end result, wouldn't have looked good, or change my project and make something that I could actually make out of that leather. So that's tip number one. Just make sure you know what project it is that you're going to be working on first, because there's a lot of different types of leather out there, and not all leather is created equally. There's different quality, there's leathers that have different characteristics to them, different feels to them, different ways how they behave. So you really need to choose carefully. Plus, leather isn't cheap, right? It's kind of expensive. It's a big purchase, for most of us. And so we want to make sure that purchase is correct at the beginning. So before I get started, though, I wanted to mention I do have a freebie that goes along with this. It's a guide that you can download at leatherbeast.com/flowchart, and it's all about helping you make your leather purchase. So you kind of do like an answer. If you answer no, move on to the next question. If you answered yes, move on to this question. It kind of like gives you some different scenarios, and it could be really helpful for you when it comes time to buy your leather. So that's at leatherbeast.com/flowchart. And then also, if you just go to leatherbeast.com, right there on the homepage, I do have the traditional leatherworking roadmap, which is also a great introductory beginner guide for anyone who's looking to get started with leather work and just wants some more information before you run out and buy tools and materials, especially if you're not sure what kind of tools and materials you actually need. So go and download those two guides, and they're really helpful. So how do we know what kind of leather to buy? So we're going to run through 4 different things to think about whenever you're buying your leather. The first is the tannage. So what I'm talking about here is chrome tanned versus veg tanned. So this is a great place to start because 80% of the world's leather production, is chrome tanned leather. The rest of that is either vegetable tanned leather or brain tanned or other types of sort of niche tanning in smaller scale. Chrome tanned leather is leather that is tanned using chromium salts. So the chrome tanning process is a lot quicker. It's a lot easier to produce, which means the leather is usually cheaper. And since it's easier to produce, it's also that's why it compiles about 80% of the world's leather. Vegetable tanned leather is leather that is tanned using organic materials, so things like tree bark and leaves, and it also uses a slower method of tanning. It takes longer to tan vegetable tanned hides. And these hides can range from a pinky beige color. I love that color, a very, very new, fresh, never seen the light of day vegetable tan to a darker but natural tan color. So I use vegetable tanned leather in all of my work, most of my work. I would say 90% of my work. Every once in a while, I'll use some chrome tanned leather, mainly because I like its durability. I like the stiffness of it, the way it really holds its shape, and it stands up on its own. There's no sagginess with it. And I also really love the way it patinas and changes over time. The patina is what's referred to with leather. It's just how the leather can darken and change its appearance just with daily use and the effects of the sun on the leather. The oils from your hands when you handle the leather, all of that contributes to how the leather darkens and patinas over time. Number two, the second thing to think about is the grain of the leather. So the two that I'm talking about are top grain versus full grain leather. These are both the high-end leathers, the top of the line. So the full grain leather is the highest grade leather. This is leather that has had the hair removed off of the surface, but other than that, it has not been touched. It's not been corrected or altered in any way. What you see is what you get. It's thick. It might have some scratches or bite marks just because of where the animal was raised. Maybe the animal rubbed up against a fence and got a scratch on its back. That you might still see in the leather. And that is just part of the character of the leather. The leather comes from an animal, and so these animals are living breathing things, and so they might have these scars. So this highest grade leather is the full grain leather, and the surface has not been corrected. Now the top grain is the second highest grade leather, and this is leather that the thickness has been split. So you have the surface of the leather and then the flesh side. That flesh side has kind of been trimmed down. So it's a thinner, more pliable leather that is still very strong and durable. And with both of these, the top grain and the full grain, since it's the top part of the leather, this is the strongest part of the leather. So both of these are very strong and durable leathers, high quality. And all of your higher end leathers are going to be either top grain, probably top grain, just because full grain is thicker and it has more of that second layer on there. Now, corrected grain leather refers to leather that's had the top surface buffed. So to remove scars, to remove insect bite scars or scratches, to perfect any sort of irregularities in the grain or the pattern of the hide. A lot of times they will buff the top surface clear and then re-emboss a pattern on top of it. In general, the thing to keep in mind here is that you want to steer clear of anything called bonded leather, split leather, or anything that claims to be genuine leather. These are really cheap leathers that are not durable, they're not quality leather, and they're not going to be what you want for your leatherwork. One thing I forgot to mention on the first one, back to the tannage, when you were talking about your chrome tanned versus your veg tanned leather, the veg tanned leather, if you are someone who is tooling or carving leather, you're going to want to get the veg tanned leather. That doesn't work on chrome tanned leather. So that's just another reason to use vegetable tanned leather. If you are a tooler, it needs to be the veg tanned leather because that is the kind of leather that's going to hold the impression of the stamp. It's going to hold the carving. Number three, the thickness of the leather. This is very important. This is often called the weight of the leather. So in the States here, we measure our leather thickness by ounces. This took me a little while to get used to at first, just because what's a 2-ounce leather versus a 10-ounce leather. But it's pretty easy actually. And once you've ordered leather a couple of times, you get used to it. But the smaller the ounce, the thinner the leather, and the bigger the ounce, the thicker the leather. So for example, a 2-ounce leather is thinner than a 10-ounce leather. And a 2-ounce leather would be good for something like if you are a glove maker, you know, you need that really soft, thin leather, or you're using leather for a bag lining that needs to be pretty thin. You're going to use something like a 2-ounce leather. For belts, you might use anywhere from a 7-ounce leather up to a 10-ounce leather, because you need a belt. It's going to be wrapped around the waist hundreds and hundreds of times, thousands of times. And so you need something that's going to keep its shape, that's strong, that's durable. You're going to need that thicker leather. For my handbags that I make, I use a 4 to 5-ounce leather. It's thick enough to keep its shape, but it's not so thick that it's hard to stitch through. And then finally, the fourth thing that you want to think about is the hand of the leather. This is, sometimes we see this in descriptions of leather. This just refers to the firmness or the softness of the leather. Vegetable tanned leather has a fuller body and a firmer feel to it than chrome tanned and oil tanned leather. Chrome tanned leather has a softer hand. It's more pliable. It's more bendable. So this comes in handy if you're working on a project where the stitching is on the inside. So for these corners, I had to turn the project inside out. I stitched it here, and then I turned it back right side out. So you wouldn't be able to do that with a piece of vegetable tanned leather unless it was really thin. But that's where chrome tanned leather comes in handy if you're creating goods that are a little bit more squishy, for lack of a better term. So that is the hand. This has a very soft hand. So like I said in the beginning, I've created a flowchart buying guide to help you determine what kind of leather is right for your project. It's called What Kind of Leather is Right for My Leather Project. And you can download that guide by going to leatherbeast/flowchart. You can also just find it in the blog posts that I have just updated the website. And you can also go to leatherbeast.com, and right on the homepage, I have 2 freebies. I have the roadmap, which is great for you if you're a beginner leather worker, someone who doesn't really know what kind of tools or materials to use. You're not really sure how to get started. This is a great, quick little introductory guide to kind of help you guide some decisions there so that you don't end up buying and wasting a bunch of time and money on things that you don't really need. Yeah, so that's it. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be talking to you very soon. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great Wednesday.